There's big news coming from the Supreme Court today, announcing this morning it will take up a major Second Amendment case.
The nation's highest court has ruled that Americans have a right to carry firearms in public for self-defense.
It's heartbreaking to hear how parents have to explain to their kids what to do if there's an active shooter.
There were at least 2,070 unintentional shootings by children. 765 of those children died.
The Supreme Court said that the Second Amendment does provide an individual right to have a gun.
Madam Speaker, the Protecting Our Kids Act is about saying no more to mass shootings.
The Supreme Court just ruled unanimously in United States v. Rodriguez that the federal definition of firearm possession now applies as one single standard across all 50 states, 9-0. Every justice agreed. And if you don't understand what this new standard means, you could be in violation of federal law right now, even if you followed your state's rules perfectly for years. I'm going to break down exactly what this means for you, what changed, and what you need to do about it before the DOJ's 60-day enforcement grace period runs out. Alright, so here's why this matters to you personally. If you own a firearm, if you carry concealed, if you transport a gun in your vehicle, if you store firearms in your home, this ruling touches your life directly. Before this decision, every state had its own definition of what it meant to possess a firearm. That sounds like a technicality, but it's not. The word possession is the trigger word, no pun intended, in dozens of federal statutes. It's the word that determines whether you're a law-abiding citizen or a federal criminal. Think about 18 U.S.C. section 922 Gs. That's the federal prohibited person statute. Think about 18 U.S.C. section 922 Q. That's the Gun-Free School Zones Act. Think about every single federal law that says possession of a firearm is the line between legal and illegal. The definition of that one word just changed nationwide, and you have roughly 60 days to make sure you're on the right side of it.
It's heartbreaking to hear how parents have to explain to their kids what to do if there's an active shooter.
There were at least 2,070 unintentional shootings by children. 765 of those children died.
Madam Speaker, the Protecting Our Kids Act is about saying no more to mass shootings.
We can pass common sense gun safety policies like this legislation. Enough is enough.
Let me break down what actually happened in this case. United States v. Rodriguez started as a routine traffic stop. Miguel Rodriguez was pulled over, and police found a handgun in his car's center console during a search related to an unrelated arrest. Rodriguez argued he wasn't in possession of the firearm under his state's legal definition because the gun wasn't on his person, it wasn't holstered, it wasn't in his hand, it was in the console. And under his state's law, that distinction mattered. His case worked its way up through the federal courts. And here's where it gets really important. Different circuit courts gave completely contradictory rulings on what possession meant. You had circuits saying a gun in your glove box is possession, and other circuits saying it isn't. That's called a circuit split. And that's exactly the kind of conflict the Supreme Court exists to resolve.
Virginia Governor Abigail Spanberger signed a series of gun control bills toughening a proposed assault firearms ban.
Department of Justice threatening to sue Virginia if Governor Abigail Spanberger signs a bill aiming to restrict guns.
I can't believe what this new Governor Spanberger has done to the Commonwealth. People that voted for Spanberger are saying to themselves, why did I do that?
In the Commonwealth, we know far too well the horrors of gun violence that impact our communities.
So the court took the case and delivered a unanimous 9-0 decision. Let me be clear about how rare that is. In a court that splits 5-4 on practically everything, all 9 justices agreed this needed to be fixed. The reasoning was straightforward. Having different definitions of the same federal crime depending on which state you happen to be standing in violates equal protection under the 14th Amendment. An American in Texas shouldn't be treated differently than an American in California when the charge is a federal offense. That's the core constitutional principle here. Now here's the part you absolutely need to understand. The court established 3 categories of possession that now apply everywhere. First, direct physical control. The firearm is in your hand, holstered on your body, or slung on your person. That's possession, no surprise there. Second, constructive possession with ready access. The firearm is in a space you control and can quickly access your glove compartment, your center console, under your car seat, a drawer in your nightstand. If you can reach it quickly, you possess it under federal law. Third, and this is the one that's catching people off guard, constructive possession in shared or controlled spaces. If you own a firearm and it's stored in a location you control or have access to, even if others also have access to that space, that can still constitute possession depending on the circumstances. This third category is where things get complicated fast, and I'll come back to it in a moment.
Of the United States Department of Justice, you now have them stepping in preemptively before a bill actually becomes law.
Over 400 silencers were found on or traced to violent crime scenes in 2023 alone.
Federal law prohibits the Consumer Product Safety Commission, the agency responsible for protecting the public from dangerous products.
Approval of the excise tax cost American taxpayers $1.5 billion.
Let me put this in practical terms so you can see why this is genuinely big news. Say you're driving across the country with your legally owned handgun. You stop for gas and realize the station is within 1,000 feet of a school. Under 18 U.S.C. Section 922Q, the Gun-Free School Zones Act, possessing a firearm in a school zone is a federal offense with narrow exceptions. Before this ruling, whether you were breaking that law depended on your state's definition of possession. Now there's one answer. If that gun is in your glove box or center console, you possess it under federal law, period. Your trunk, on the other hand, likely does not constitute possession under the court's framework because you cannot quickly access it. That distinction between your console and your trunk could be the difference between a federal felony and a legal drive home.
Gun owners in Alabama are still required to have a permit to have their weapon on school property or within 1,000 feet of campus.
Outspoken sheriffs have opposed the permitless carry bill, saying the permits help combat crime and enhance public safety.
Permitless carry. They don't want you to buy a permit anymore to carry a handgun.
I myself and my organization, Moms Demand Action, we do support the Second Amendment.
Here's another scenario that affects a huge number of people. If you have a domestic violence restraining order against you, you're a prohibited person under 18 U.S.C. Section 922 grams 8. Before this ruling, some states allowed prohibited persons to keep firearms in their home as long as the guns were locked away or stored separately. The court's new constructive possession standard calls that into question. If those firearms are in a safe inside your home and you have the combination or a key, a federal prosecutor can now argue you possess those firearms under the Uniform National Standard. This also directly connects to United States v. Rahimi, the case the Supreme Court decided last year upholding Section 922 grams 8 restraining order prohibitions. Rahimi confirmed the government can prohibit firearm possession for people under domestic violence restraining orders. Rodriguez now defines what possession actually means in that context. Those two rulings together significantly expand federal enforcement power over prohibited persons. And that's not something you're going to hear about on the evening news.
This article says the mass shootings where stricter gun laws might have made a difference.
There have been more and more shootings. It is getting worse and worse. Mass shootings have occurred in the workplace, on college campuses.
Outspoken sheriffs have opposed the permitless carry bill, saying the permits help combat crime and enhance public safety.
The law has not changed. Nothing has changed. The new law changed nothing about who could carry on school property.
This also has massive implications for households with mixed legal statuses. If you legally own firearms but live with someone who is a prohibited person, whether that's a roommate, a family member, or a spouse, the storage situation just got a lot more serious. Under the old patchwork, some states said a locked safe that only the legal owner could access was sufficient. Under the new federal standard, if the prohibited person has regular access to the area where the safe is located, a prosecutor might argue constructive possession. The court acknowledged this is a gray area and left specific fact patterns for lower courts to sort out on a case-by-case basis. But the direction is clear. The standard just got stricter.
Also need a permit in anything to do with school grounds or sporting events where you parking on school grounds.
Stipulations in the legislation is that a person will be required to have a gun permit if they go into another state.
And we can't stop them unless we put the schools, unless the schools look like Fort Knox.
It makes all of us less safe. We need universal background checks.
She's a leftist, and she doesn't like guns or gun rights, former CIA operative.
Now let me give you the honest assessment, because that's what I'm here for. Is this ruling a total loss for gun owners? No, it's not. There are actually some positives here. The court explicitly stated that merely being in the same room as a firearm does not constitute possession. If you're a passenger in someone else's car and they have a legal gun, you don't possess it. If you're handling a firearm at a gun store or range under supervision, that temporary contact doesn't trigger federal prohibitions. Those clarifications matter, and they protect innocent people from absurd prosecutions. But here's what concerns me. The court did not provide a clear safe harbor for emergency situations. What happens if a prohibited person finds a firearm and picks it up to safely clear it and call police? Technically, they just possessed a firearm under federal law. The court mentioned these edge cases but punted them to lower courts. That's a gap that's going to generate litigation for years.
We have to end the senseless deaths of our children and our neighbors. Vote yes. I yield back.
Instead of regulating guns like any other consumer product, federal law protects gun manufacturers.
With the last administration, when you saw a weaponization of this department, the likes of which had never been seen in history.
Has simple but effective solutions. Raise the minimum age to 21 to buy a semi-automatic rifle.
The broader picture here is this. Rodriguez, combined with New York State Rifle and Pistol Association v. Bruin from 2022 and last year's Rahimi decision, is reshaping the entire federal firearms framework. Bruin gave us the historical tradition test for evaluating gun laws. Rahimi tested the limits of who can be disarmed. And now Rodriguez defines the foundational word that every federal gun statute depends on, possession. These three cases together are the new legal architecture for your Second Amendment rights. And if you're not tracking all three, you're operating with incomplete information. So here's your status check, right now today. The Supreme Court's ruling in United States v. Rodriguez is the law of the land as of this decision. The DOJ has announced a 60-day grace period before aggressive enforcement of the new standard begins. If you carry in your vehicle, you need to rethink where that firearm sits, console versus trunk, because it matters now more than ever. If anyone in your household is a prohibited person, you need to consult an attorney about your storage situation immediately, not next month now. And if you're currently dealing with any legal situation that could affect your status, a pending case, a restraining order, anything, this ruling just changed the rules you're playing by. Review your situation with a qualified firearms attorney in your state. That's it for today, folks. See you in the next video.